Hi BookTube. Today I'm going to talk about my top 10 fantasy series. I'm not big on intros, so let's do the list. Oh, and it turns out I'm not that good at lists either. So, number 10 is a joint number 10. So, the two series in at 10 are the Shannara books by Terry Brooks. That includes the original trilogy and probably the Scions of Shannara as well. And as far as I'm aware, there were then loads more written that I never read. So I won't worry about them. And the other series here is The Dragons of Pern by Anne McCaffrey. Now, both of these series hold a special place in one of my hearts because they're some of the first fantasy books I read years ago, just after they built a library above my cave. So I wanted them on the list. However, I do have some concerns that if I were to read those books now, they might not be my favourites. I suspect my tastes have changed. Maybe the books would feel a bit dated, I don't know. But for the love I held for them years ago, and the feels they give me in one of my hearts, they're on the list. It's my list. Don't judge me. Joint 10th. Number 9. Six of Crows. Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Thoroughly enjoyable book with some great characters. Those of you who have read it will know that. The sequel, Crooked Kingdom, was not bad either. So it's on the list at 9. Number 8. The Farseer Trilogy by Robin Hobb. No, must be on one of my other bookshelves. They're great books. Robin Hobb has many fans, and I am one of them. One of the main reasons I really enjoyed the Farseer Trilogy was Night Eyes. The wolf. Dog. Wolf dog. I think he's a wolf. Maybe a dog. Can't remember. And the main character's sort of symbiotic relationship with his, maybe not pet, his animal companion, made the books thoroughly enjoyable. 7. Nevernight by J. Kristoff. You can't be watching BookTube and be unaware of this book. Book 1 of the Nevernight Chronicle, Nevernight, is one of my favourite books. So I certainly couldn't leave this series off the list. Book 2, God's Grave, is also a pretty good read. And Book 3, Dark Dawn, it was okay. I was quite disappointed by it, so that's why this series doesn't rank higher on the list, but definitely on the list. The Nevernight Chronicle. It has one of the greatest fictional characters of all time, Mr. Kindly, and Mia's pretty good too. A deadly, fairly brutal assassin and killer, who's kind of lovable too, at times, with some really great plot devices in book 1. 1, 2, 6 in the list. Now, this is where my list gets a little bit murky, because I'm going to put the Rift War series by Raymond Feist. But really, I'm actually putting the Serpent War series by Raymond Feist. It's all kind of one thing. Book 1, Magician, brilliant book, classic fantasy. Books 2 and 3, yeah, they were okay. and those formed the original trilogy, which set up the world. Now, the Serpent War series, starring a couple of characters called Eric and Rue, were probably my favourite books from Midkemia, the fictional world where they exist. I thought their character development and the plot had a brilliant build-up to a series of quite exciting events that really drew me into the world of Midkemia. And from there we go to number 5, which is a progression. Also by Raymond Feist, but co-authored with Johnny Wirtz, is the Empire trilogy. Set in sort of the same fictional universe, but literally on a different world, Keloan instead of Midkemia. This follows a culture that's somewhat more Asian-styled, albeit with sentient giant ants. And the main character, Mara, in this, is, I found, quite an inspiring character. She really takes on a lot of burdens and goes about saving her house and reforging her empire through a series of quite brave gambles and exciting manoeuvres. I thought the world building in this was actually superior to the Rift War cycle that kind of set the stage for these books. So they're my number 5. Number 4, I'm going with the Draenei books by David Gemmell. Now, this is arguably cheating because the Draenei books are kind of a collection of series and novels, all set in the same world, with some crossover of characters and places and timelines, and I enjoyed each and every one of them. Something I like about the Draenei books is that this is a collection of heroes who very much see the world in black and white. There's no shades of grey with them. Everyone's either a good guy to be helped or a bad guy to be killed. There's no shades of grey, unlike in the real world, or even most other fantasy books. And that sort of clean-cut escapism, where you have a world that's more simple, is something I can quite enjoy in fantasy, sometimes. So there we are. In at 4, David Gemmell with his Draenei novels. Into the top tier. And number 3, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I love the magic system, I love the plot, I love the character development, I love the action sequences. The main character, Vin, when she's doing her thing using all of her powers, it's just very exciting. And I particularly like how throughout the trilogy, by book 3, the main characters are kind of thinking that their altruistic goals that they set about achieving in book 1 were maybe mistakes. Maybe the bad guy they were out to kill was not all that bad. But they accept it and move on. It's nice to see people considering that they might have made a mistake, even in fictional novels. Number 2. Now, I can imagine that most people would have a hard choice picking between their number 1 and 2. And of course I did. Goblins don't have it any easier. Number 2, Stormlight, again by Brandon Sanderson. It's so good. Even though there's only 3.5 novels out of a 10+ book epic cycle, this is shaping up to be the greatest set of books in existence. But the fact that we're only 3 and a bit books in means that it can't really hold the number 1 spot. It may well one day, or it might crash and burn. We just don't know. But I wish I was one of the Knights Radiant. I want my little Spren giving me magic powers and helping me do awesome stuff. If you've read it, you will too. Fact. That leaves number 1, The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. And and latterly finished by Brandon Sanderson. This is the epic fantasy series to stomp over all other epic fantasy series. I've never felt like I knew characters and cultures so well. I felt that the character development through this catalogue of books was slow and steady and done so well. I felt like I knew those people. The cultures were built, and not just describing a culture, going back through time to establish how those cultures formed across thousands of years. I think I know more about the Aiel culture and how they came to live in the desert than I know about British history, where I live. I love the magic system. I love the fact that there's different armies fighting for the same goals but against each other because they don't even realise their goals are the same. It's just great. I mean, there's a lot of books. Some books are worse than others. I'm looking at you, Crossroads of Twilight, but most of them are 2 thumbs good. So there we go. I guess we have my list of 10 favourite fantasy series, which is actually 11. And since I haven't stuck to 10 anyway, I'm going to give some honourable mentions. Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Ames. I've only read book 1, but I enjoyed it so much I'm putting it on the list. I really read it as a standalone novel, but there is a sequel, and I think there's a third in the pipeline, so it's almost on the list. Lightbringer by Brent Weeks. I ended up enjoying book 1 much more than I thought I was going to, and book 2 also very good. Books 3 and 4 maybe went slightly off the boil, and I haven't actually read book 5. That's not to say I won't. I hopefully will get around to it, and once I've read book 5, maybe that would go onto the list. I don't know. And finally, an honourable mention for Lord of the Rings. It would be hard to have a list like this without Lord of the Rings. It kind of set the scene for all of these books. Did the groundwork. Yeah, I've read it several times. I enjoy it, apart from that bit with Tom Bombadil. But it has dated somewhat. It doesn't make my top 10 anymore. Okay? Bye.